Hello, everyone. We'll just give it a minute while I see some names still popping in. So we'll give it just a few minutes. Let everyone get on. Thank you for your patience in the waiting room. I know we were having some technical difficulties this evening, but it looks like we are up and running and recording now. And possibly live streaming on Facebook. I'm not sure if we're there yet, but if not, this will be available after. I know Tom was potentially calling in as well. That's his number here, Amy.
We're really sporting the glasses here in Amherst.
Allergy season.
It is. It's allergy season.
Okay. It is 6:02, and I would like to call this meeting of the Joint Facilities Advisory Committee to order. Thank you all for being here. Our first order of business on the agenda this evening is to approve two sets of minutes. So the first set would be the April 1st, 2021 minutes. If I could get a motion. Victoria, I see your hand. Thank you. Are there any questions regarding the April 1st minutes? Okay, great. Those will enter the record as written. And then the minutes from our meeting last week on May 5th, Renee has posted those. So hopefully everyone's had a chance to take a look. If I could get a motion to accept those minutes. Anyone?
I'll make a motion, but I wasn't there.
Okay. Okay, I have one from Victoria as well.
I can motion
Okay. Any questions on the minutes?
Actually, I do, because I wasn't there. When it lists the committee members, are you listing us as just because we're a committee member? Is that saying we were actually there?
Let me.
Because it has me listed, but I wasn't at that particular meeting.
Let me take a look real quick at her notes. Oh, wrong side. Yeah, that's a little confusing. I agree. So I'll ask Danae to strike your name from that list. Yeah, okay. There are a couple of folks who weren't there. Thank you. I'll talk with Danae about that and we'll get that change made. Any other comments or questions?
I'd like to suggest that we make Danae a panelist as opposed to an attendee so she can see who's here and who's talking.
Sure. Yeah, I don't have any problem with that, Amy. I think you're driving if you want to move her over and she can keep her camera off if she would like. I know she was planning to be here taking notes only. Okay, are we good with accepting the May 5th minutes with those changes made to the list of attendees? All right. Great, thank you. All right, so our next order of business will be our subcommittee report outs from the facility project team. The first report out this evening is just an update on the site and civil work taking place. Roger, if you don't mind, if you could fill in the committee on that work at Wilkins.
Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, we had Ty and Bod come down and we did some test pits up at Upper Wilkins Field. We worked with the rec department to find a good spot in the field just to make sure if we're able to just really see what the subsurfaces were up there, to see if we could put a septic system up there if needed, or just really seeing what's the subsurface to see what the potentials are for up there. And then we also did some borings down on Lower Wilkins Field. We did 4 borings just again to see what type of subsurface is underneath. And we're just waiting for the reports to come back from Ty and Bond on the test pits and the borings.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Roger? Any idea, Roger, how long that takes to get those reports back?
I'm thinking at least a couple of weeks for them to get them back to us, just
Sure.
to go through the samples and then give us the data.
Great. All right. Thank you. Well, as you all will recall from our meeting last week, we made a recommendation to the Amherst School Board, or we were planning to make a recommendation to the Amherst School Board when we met last week, and we talked through that process that we went through in selecting an architect. I am very pleased to share with all of you that on Monday evening, we attended the Amherst School Board meeting, Victoria and myself on behalf of the committee, and made our recommendation and discussed our process, and they approved the hiring of Banwell Architects. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce Ingrid Nichols and Brad Prescott from Banwell. I've invited Ingrid and Brad here this evening just to say a quick hello, introduce themselves, and maybe share a little bit about where they see the next month or two going for us, but not to put you all on the spot too much, as I know that you are newly joining our team, and we're happy to welcome you. Oh, I cannot hear you. I think sometimes if it's your phone, you have to maybe tell your panelist. Yep, you're a panelist, yep. So we should be able to hear you. But your phone is muted. Are you the 443 number? There you go.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, there we go.
Technology. Well, thank you again. Thank you, Shannon. We are very excited to be here. My name is Ingrid Nichols. I've been with Banwell since 2000, and I'm the president and own the firm. We've done literally hundreds of schools in New Hampshire and just love doing educational facilities. So we are very, very thrilled to be here as part of your team.
Great.
Hi, I'm Brad Prescott. I've been doing this about 30 years and been up in this area about 5 of those years, and love doing schools. We're very excited to be digging our teeth into your project and your district and really understanding your needs well. There's a lot of information here to start with, and it's a very exciting group to be a part of.
Thanks. Well, we're happy to have you. I'm wondering if you could maybe just give the committee a flavor for coming in at this phase of a project. I know when we met with you during the interview process, you shared with us extensive experience. Coming in at this point, kind of where will you start, and what can we be looking forward to the next time we see you all here?
Sure. So we're used to doing this. We've followed several different architects after a bond vote has failed or if it just didn't work out before. And we like to think that we think outside the box, we engage the community, we are listeners, so we really rigorously work and ask all the questions for the principals, the faculty, the facilities group, the kitchen group, everyone. We like to talk with everyone. We also like to talk and get the word out as we go so that the community is part of the solution. So really, we've started by analyzing what you've done to date, which is amazing. It's really good information that's not wasted. Then we have already met with Roger and toured your schools and your sites. We've talked with Ty and Bond, who we're very familiar with and have worked with on dozens of projects to help solidify kind of a holistic view of the project so we all aren't working in separate kind of tunnels. And then we have analyzed your programs and kind of preliminarily have found that they are kind of the needs and the wishes and the wants and everything. So we've started a discussion with the principals and the core team of the administration to try to see and push and pull to try to make sure that what we have for a program of spaces, the square footages, match one that makes sense for New Hampshire and also makes sense for your unique schools. So we've done that. Brad has been very instrumental in going through the program, so that's what we're currently doing. And we've also started thinking about all of the outside of box options on the sites so that we can, again, design as a kind of a circular process. And we really want to be able to look at all of the different options so that when we get to the pre-bond, the bond hearing, you know, and someone stands up and says, have you looked at this option? We can say definitively, yes, we have, and it doesn't work because of X. So really, the train is moving, and we're trying to get up to speed and do everything and have these options for you in the next 3 to 4 weeks.
Wow.
And in the meantime, what we're doing is as we're going through this program, we'll be meeting with the educators, stakeholders, and then one meeting next week, and another meeting a week after that, trying to go through and really get into some of the weeds about what the priorities are and make sure that we are understanding our interpretation of our previous kickoff meeting and melding that with the program you guys put together to date, how that manifested itself in the previous design, and where are the disconnects, and where are the things to improve on, and where are the things that you'd like to leverage from the last design.
Another interesting thing is that we are hopefully going to engage the students in this as well. I, as an architect, when I was in middle school, was exposed to an architecture project, and that's actually what got me interested in architecture. So you never know, we could be budding a new architect in Amherst.
That is fantastic, and I appreciate that you all have hit the ground running. I would like to give the committee members present tonight a quick opportunity for a quick question or two, keeping in mind that Brad and Ingrid have just joined us. But I do want to give everyone an opportunity to just say hello or ask any questions that you may have, or share any things you might want to share with them, you know, as they're beginning their work to date. If anyone has anything, you can raise your real hand or your virtual hand, or I see Victoria and then Brian.
I'll just jump on and say that I'm so excited. I was part of the process where we selected Banwell, and I've been able to be part of the process where Amherst School Board members were talking with Shannon and I about the process of the interviews. And I really feel confident that we found a great match for Amherst, as well as a great match for our JFAT group and our school board and our administration and our community, really as this multifaceted group trying to bring about a school. So I'm excited to see you all. I don't have any questions for you. It sounds like you're off to a great start. And that's exactly what we were hoping for. So thank you.
Thank
Victoria.
you.
Brian?
So I think most of the people that are on the call tonight, we've been actively involved with this for probably 2.5, almost 3 years now. We've done a lot of work, a lot of groundwork. We have a pretty good understanding of the community. We have a pretty good understanding of what some of the concerns are. I guess the question for you is, how can we help you accelerate the work that you need to do? How can we be resources for you to get the insights you're looking for, to get the best understanding possible, and point you in the directions that we believe the community is looking for? Just let us know how we can help.
Basically, I think you're going to help throughout the process, and it's really about getting the word out and getting the truth and the facts out to all of your different networks in town. So I don't know, and I should have looked.
You already have a terrific website.
That's what I was just going to say.
A real benefit. I mean, so, you've covered a big hurdle there. Now it's really looking at all the other outreach channels and making sure that, you really saturated the community with messaging. So probably, I don't think you can have that conversation early enough as to how many different ways you want to connect with the community on the project. How many public meetings you want to have, mailers, Facebook, YouTube videos, which I know you guys have done. So, I mean, you know, what refreshing of that material needs to happen, and sort of planning forward for that and putting resources together for it.
But listening to and bringing back constructive criticism on what a problem may be, and then we brainstorm on what the solutions can be, rather than pointing out all the negative things. Let's solve problems.
Great, thanks. Well, we do, and I'm so happy that you've seen the work that this group has taken on, and the website was a huge piece of that. We have several different subcommittees: public relations, construction cost, finance, at Clark Exploration Committee, which you'll hear from later this evening, looking at one of our buildings that, you know, potentially we won't need should this project move forward. So we will make certain that each of those committee chairs have your information and are keeping you looped into what we're doing so that we can work together. From a public relations standpoint, which is a big part of this, as you mentioned, getting information in the hands of residents so they know what, you know, the process we're going through and what they will be asked. We meet weekly, that group does. So we will certainly be checking in with you all as you are ramping up to make certain that the information that we have on the website is still where we are, you know, as things evolve. We certainly would hope to work closely with you to make certain that we're putting forward all of the right pieces of information.
Perfect.
Anyone else? Jeannie.
Hi, I too am very excited about the choice that you all for you know, architects for us. The one question I had, and I know it may be a really stupid question, but because I wasn't part of the, you know, the construction selection process, the design that was created that we include in our website. Are we starting from scratch now to do something, you know, that is original for you all, or do you take that and I guess I'm confused. That's all.
Yeah, we can shed some light on that. So yes and no. We are not starting completely from scratch. You know, we have a program, which is a listing of the spaces and their square footages that you've done, and that's very helpful. What we are doing is reopening the design option kind of area, because we feel that we need more input from the end users, the faculty, the principals, because it just didn't seem like it was fully vetted out. We also, for instance, the elementary school site, part of your new building was built on top of your existing building, on top of the septic, which we feel there could be some other options that we should look at. So we're not scrapping it totally, but I think it warrants looking at 2 or 3 or 4 different site options that came apparent when we did our site walk for you to review.
That's great. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You. Ellen, I see your hand.
Yeah. Hi, welcome to our party. It's a good one. This is a great group. So my question is, you know, just a reflection of what you've just said, reaching out to administration. I would highly encourage sitting down with a group of seasoned teachers from our district as well, from both schools. We have a relatively new administration. And I think historically our teachers who are in the throes of using the building probably the most would have some really good feedback. And there's a lot of really great teachers who I'm sure would love to share more. So I would highly encourage, certainly administration is important, but because they all have been here for a short period of time, I would almost put teachers at the top of that list.
We already have those meetings scheduled.
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay. Anyone else tonight? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Brad and Ingrid, so much. I would welcome you to stay on the call. We do have a few other agenda items if your schedule allows. If it doesn't, I recognize this was a short notice invitation. So feel free to jump off if you need to. All right. Our next item on the agenda is an update from the Kegan 2.0 committee, and that's Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks, Shannon. So we are, I'll say, reconvening. Might be a way. We're going to start. We had a meeting with Mike Berry, the principal, and on the committee is Jeannie Lute, Lisa Eastland, Christine Grayson has joined us, and I asked Christy Peters to also join into our group. She's new to our school board. It'd be a good way for her to get introduced, I think, to some of our teachers, our programs, and she has a background in science and teaching science. So I thought it'd be a great way to start getting her involved a little bit. So we sat down, a couple of us sat down with Mike, and we asked him fully about the science program. So we originally were talking about just doing 3 rooms in the annex. And we kind of held off saying, we know there's more going on potentially. We were a little worried about just getting the funding through. Do we have the whole program? We haven't vetted it. We weren't feeling comfortable. So we started with Mike, and he gave us the green light to reach out to Roger and to Nathan Carl. And we're going to meet with them on May 25th, and we're going to go through the chem labs and the physics labs, as well as any of the other science classrooms that are in the main building. And then it'll allow us to actually see it as well, because most people in our committee have not been in the school, so they haven't actually seen it. And Mike is actually very happy to hear that we're addressing some of the outdated equipment and rooms in there as well. So we're going to see what we can do without, tearing the rooms apart completely. If there's even just, whether it's maintenance, whether it's some cabinet upgrades, whatever we can assess. And then we want to put together a whole plan. So whether it's a short-term plan or a long-term plan. So we know there's going to be different needs, and maybe at different times it might be spaced. It maybe we ask for it all at once, but we want to address it all in one program. Which leads me to the next piece, which I found out today. So Dan Vayu is one of our Amherst reps, and he's working on the county budget. They happen to be getting $46 million from the funding that's coming from the government. And they're looking to spend it, across the county, and they're kind of interested in spending it on kids. So he said, what do you need in your schools? And I said, oh, I've got a project for you. So I reached out to Adam, who had me talk with Amy today, and we're going to start the process of approaching them and saying, can we get in on that $46 million? Maybe we can, call it deferred maintenance, do some, so maybe we're going to find some funding through another source, which was very exciting to start thinking
I feel
about.
like it's Christmas. That's amazing.
Right?
For this committee, yeah. Thank you to Mr. Vayu. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so Megan Murray is also a rep, and Tony LaBranch and Dan are all on this committee. So they're going to help us see if we can get some of the money and maybe fund it all at once. We'll see.
Well, that was a great update, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else for us, or does anyone have any questions for Stephanie?
Ellen,
Ellen, Ellen, your hand is up. Is that from earlier?
That's from earlier.
Okay, awesome. All righty. Amy is next for the Finance Subcommittee.
Thank you, Shannon. So yeah, last time we met, I just gave a brief update on state building aid, but certainly if nothing has happened since, but certainly if folks who were not on at the last meeting, feel free to ask me any questions. But we did have the Mount Vernon tuition agreement presented at the last deliberative. That will be voted on in June. But just to let you all know that the calculation for what Mount Vernon would provide for capital improvements, that calculation has stayed the same. There were other changes to the agreement, but not to that. So once we have a number that we feel comfortable with, we can go ahead and at least do some projections on what we think that calculation would be. So too early to do that now, but that will be forthcoming. Michelle and I also had a meeting today with Nick Strong and Natasha, and I'll butcher her name if I try to say it, at the town to talk about impact fees. So just starting to try to get an understanding of how that process works. And John, feel free to pipe in or correct me as I just give a brief summary of what I learned today, which is the impact fee rates are published, and there's information in the zoning ordinance that speaks to it, but there isn't necessarily a outlined process and rules and regulations. And Nick indicated that that was something that she wanted to work on so that we would have a clearer path. But we did agree that she would send us the balance that they create for impact fees that are collected and how those would be distributed potentially to police, fire, schools. So we would have that information on to at least know what has been collected. The way it works is we would need to demonstrate that there was a relationship between growth in our community that would make us eligible to gain access to those impact fees. And it's up to the selectmen upon our request for those fees to make the determination whether we be eligible. Those fees sit in a fund for 6 years, and if they're not utilized, then they are returned to the developer. So I'm going to ask John to jump in and elaborate or correct or provide any additional information.
Sure. All right. So the Board of Selectmen has passed the appropriate ordinance to allow the planning board to assess and collect impact fees. Once they are collected, we do not, Nick is correct, we do not currently have a process to allocate them out to potentially Kegan, to Amherst, or to the town. That has to be written. That is the planning board's job. Once they've done that, they will come back to the Board of Selectmen and say, do you have any problem with this? And we'll probably say no, because they'll probably have run a draft by us already, and that will be that. So once the process is in place, if we charge impact fees to a development, and if it's, for example, a development that's 55 or older, there's probably not going to be a lot going to the schools from that. On the other hand, if it's a development that's likely to have young children, then quite a bit may be going to the schools. So that, again, that's a process that has to be written, and Nick has the to do to make that so. I'm quite sure that once we've collected them and we have a process for distributing them, if you're entitled to your portion of it, we will certainly give them to you as soon as you ask for them.
Great. Thank you, John.
Now, doesn't it have to be that if you're going to collect impact fees, it has to be only on projects that have already been, where there was cost associated, that was voted on by the public, and projects that have been moved forward? You cannot charge the impact fees until work has been effectively voted on and approved by the town for spending purposes. Is that correct, John?
Not quite, no. The way it works is from the time we made it possible for the planning board to assess impact fees, all developments from that point forward can be subjected to impact fees. It does not require approval of the voters of the town to do anything. If the planning board decides that impact fees are warranted, they will charge them. We will collect them. And if we don't use them in 6 years, we'll have to give them back. But I'm fairly sure we'll find a use for any impact fees within the 6-year period. Having said that, it's not likely we're going to collect enough impact fees to build a bridge or to repave 2 miles of road or anything like that. They will make a contribution towards town expenses or school expenses, but all we can charge for is the incremental impact. We cannot charge for existing students, populations, existing roads in the condition they are, and so on. If we need a new road, or if we need to widen a road to make a development feasible, we can charge them for that. But we cannot charge for existing infrastructure, demand on the schools or demand on the town.
But that said, you can't charge an impact fee for schools right now, but you could, once the voters approved funding to build a new school going forward, you could then use some of the impact fees for new development after that.
That is not correct. We can charge impact fees for the schools right now. The schools can apply for it, saying we need it to compensate for the impact of new students or new facilities or new whatever. But we can collect the money now, and you can decide what the justification is for asking for it later. We are able to charge fees as of today.
How do you do the calculation of what the impact fee is if you don't have, a line item for, building something new or renovating something or expanding something?
When we passed it gave the planning board the ability to do that, it came with a chart, if you will, of impact fees by category, including some for schools, some for the town, and so on. That would be the planning board's guidance on what to charge. If the developer thinks that's unfair, they're welcome to appeal, first to the selectmen and then to the courts. But there is a template in place to show the planning board, here's what we think you should be charging for the various and sundry items that you're allowed to charge for.
And John, I believe that's posted on the town website, correct?
It is.
Yeah.
So the town and the voters have done what they need to do. It's up to the planning board to assess them. The town will collect them. And then either the town or one of the school systems needs to ask for whatever they think their fair share is. And Nick will guide you on what your fair share is based on what the planning board decided to charge.
And from what she was saying, it really is based on our narrative of growth, and how we can explain that this is an incremental charge that we would be entitled to.
Well, I mean, you do have to have some hook to hang your charges on. But if you're building 60 new houses for families, 3 or 4 bedrooms, that would seem to be incremental growth for both the town, the school systems, and so on.
Right.
If it is a replacement, if you're knocking down an existing structure and putting up a new one in its place, that's not really a change. But yes, any new developments, any new housing, any new something should create an incremental demand on the town and or the schools for which we can charge.
Jeannie, I see your hand. Did you have a question?
Yeah, John, I think John keeps using the word if we charge impact fees. I'm a little confused about that. Seems like we should be charging impact fees to every developer. Is that incorrect thinking?
Whether it's correct thinking or not, that's not the way it works. It is at the discretion of the planning board whether they charge impact fees or they don't. So potentially they could have a development and they could waive impact fee charges because they think it's a good development, we really need it. Alternatively, they could adopt a policy of we charge impact fees all the time and let the developer explain why that's not appropriate. Again, that process and the policies have not been written yet. That is the planning board's job. And once they do that, they'll come back and talk to the selectmen and say, here's what we're planning to do. Do you have any problem with that? Because if the town gets sued, we get to defend the town.
I guess it will be up to the public to put pressure on the planning board to make sure that they are exercising their right to put forward impact fees on a regular basis.
Since the planning board is now elected, you are absolutely correct. It used to be
Okay.
the selectmen got to pick the planning board members. We were therefore indirectly responsible for their performance. The voters have now chosen to do that, so the voters are now responsible for monitoring the planning board.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, John. Amy, did you have anything else to add from the Finance Committee, or does anyone else have any other questions for Amy? So Amy, first, that question is to you, I guess. Do you have any other updates for us?
I don't think so. I think at the next meeting, we should have an update on the USDA application and if they're requiring anything additional from us prior to the end of the fiscal year. So Michelle and I will be meeting with them to make sure that, you know, we don't lose any opportunity in needing to submit anything prior to then. So, but we, as we all know, we have submitted that initial application.
Okay, great. And thank you for your ongoing work with the state aid and keeping us updated on that front. I know that there's still a lot of things we don't know yet about what's going to happen with that, but I think it's really important that we put all of our best effort there, you know, for whatever may be available. So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely. The contact at the New Hampshire DOE, Amy Clark, has been really helpful and very forthcoming. So I know I'm going to be continuing conversations with her as we move along.
Super, great, thank you. Okay, moving along the agenda, the PR subcommittee is next, and Tom is not here, so I will do that update. Like I mentioned earlier, we continue to meet weekly. There is going to be a table set up on June 8th outside of Kegan for town voting day. And Ellen and Lisa and Josh Conklin and some others from this group will probably be reaching out if they need some support, but they have taken that charge to work the table. And at this point in time, I think the plan is to just have a flyer available for folks to follow us. So similar to the postcard that went out, to have some information available on how residents can keep up with this work and what's going on. What else? We continue, Ellen is our Facebook person trying to keep folks engaged on social media there. But otherwise, we've been a little quiet. We're working on a video series number 2 that will come out hopefully next week, Brian, Tom, and I. We're going to meet with Amy and Roger on Friday morning, tomorrow morning, I guess, to just go through some questions that we have before we shoot that video. But this one's going to kind of focus on what we've looked at so far related to cost of running our current buildings and programs and what led to kind of the phase of the project that we're in now. And I think that's it from PR, unless I missed something, Ellen. Yes.
Yeah. You know what, just speaking from my Facebook standpoint, I have a question regarding these meetings because I just got a text from somebody wondering why it wasn't on Facebook to watch it. Can you give me an update about that so I can share?
Yeah, I apologize that it's not. Typically, Superintendent Steele runs the Zoom on the back end for us and live streams those, and he had a last minute conflict come up, and that's why it's not. But we are recording. We will be posting this to YouTube in the next day or two, and once we do, we can share that on the SAU Facebook page along with our JFAC Facebook page. And I apologize.
Usually, yes, just to not.
Exactly. Yeah. We've live streamed every meeting since the start of the pandemic. This happens to unfortunately be the first one where we've had a little hiccup. So my apologies.
I'll let them know. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Anyone else? Jeannie, your hand is up. That may be from earlier. No. Okay. All right, then we will move on to the Clark Exploration Subcommittee. I know Victoria has a presentation to share with us tonight regarding the work that they've been doing over the last several months. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shannon. Before I start sharing my screen, this is it feels like it's a bit of a lengthy presentation because there's a lot of meat to it. So as we go, stop me if it totally doesn't make sense, but otherwise my plan is to ask for lots of questions and comments and discussion at the end. Okay. And I will attempt to share my screen. Move everybody out of the way on my screen. Hold on one second. You're all in the middle of my slides. That's not going to work. All right. Are you guys ready? So here we are, the Clark School Exploration Subcommittee. The group is made up of myself and Jeannie Lute and Christine Grayson, and then Amherst School Board member Josh Conklin. And I'm trying to click, there we go. Today we're going to go over 4 things. We're going to discuss the process. We'll go over the survey questions that were asked of people. We'll talk about the results, both in terms of data and in terms of the words that came from the conversations. And then we'll give some recommendations for the group. So the process, when we talk about where we began, we started back at the end of February. And first we connected as a subcommittee. And then we connected with town representatives, Clark neighbors, community members, and other community centers. Last month, I attended the Board of Selectmen meeting with Shannon, and we gave a little highlight to this group existing. Then we have gone over, as a subcommittee, we've gone over the survey results, and then we are here to present to JFAC tonight. When we first met as a subcommittee, we realized that we needed a focus. Otherwise, talking about Clark seemed like it was something that needed to be done in the present, but it also seemed like something that needed to be done years down the road. So what we did was we created a mission statement. There's our mission statement. It is to gather input from experts and community stakeholders on possible ways to utilize the Clark School building and site should the proposal by the Amherst School District to build a new elementary school to house pre-K through 5th grade be approved by voters in the future. What we did as a subcommittee is we continually went back to this mission statement to make sure that our process was really focused on exactly what we're supposed to be doing. And our whole process was to gather input. So that's what we have focused on. We have been making connections. First, we connected with town representatives. We were fortunate enough to be able to connect with selectmen, the town administrator, and various members of town commissions. What we did was we had a Zoom call where we kind of said, hey, here's what the schools are thinking. And we don't know what Clark will be used for, and we're just kind of opening the conversation. And we were really fortunate that the conversation really became an organic conversation where everything went back and forth, and the people who were attending asked for a tour of Clark. So we went ahead and toured Clark with them. And then, like I had mentioned, we've gone back and we've broached the topic with the Board of Selectmen at our monthly meetings where JFAC presents there. When it came to the neighbors, what we did was we created a flyer. This was our first reach out to the neighbors. So it wasn't really necessary that we do anything formal in terms of the Historic Commission or letting them know in a certified letter. Instead, this was really meant to just be a conversation starter. It's difficult with neighbors without knowing people's email addresses to get in touch with them. So what we did was we left this flyer on everyone's doors, and we invited them to attend one of 2 Zooms. And at those Zooms, we really scheduled only the Clark School neighbors for certain nights so that we could focus on their input. And then community members were invited in a similar way, although these members were invited through their emails. So what we did was we reached out to community leaders of various organizations, the Garden Club, for example, and we said, hey, here's what we have going on. Here are some dates for these Zooms. Please send this out to your membership if you're interested. So we sent out to, I think, over 10 different groups here in town. We have such a vibrant volunteer pool and active community that a lot of people, I think, heard about the meetings, which was great. It really opened up the conversation. And then finally, the Amherst Citizen hosted, in the Amherst Citizen, we always have our little JFAC column, but the Amherst Citizen also pushed out our survey for us. So that was really great in gathering the input from community members who might not be involved with the organizations that we had previously targeted. And then finally, a few of our committee members went to different community centers or interviewed people at community centers that would have previously been schools in other towns, just to kind of get an understanding of what the possibilities are. Something that I want to mention about all of our Zooms for the town reps, the Clark school neighbors, the community members, and then of course the citizen, is that everyone had access to the survey afterward. So we have some multiple choice answers for the survey, and then we also had some open-ended questions for the survey to get lots of input. When our group got together, we decided that we talked, first of all, right? And we talked and we listened to each other, and it really felt like all of the future possible uses would probably fall under several columns, right? Several, silos of use. So they're in no particular order, and in several places, every different meeting, we listed them in different orders and things like that to try to get a really organic feel to it. But the 4 options that we kind of settled upon were sell for residential use, sell for commercial use, raise the lot for green space, and for the property to be sold to a town or foundation. So the survey, like I said, the survey holds lots of data. First, we had to create the survey questions. And we wanted to make sure that we had information, we were gathering the right information, right? And we wanted to make sure that it was short enough that people would participate. Our survey was about 8 questions, give or take. Could have been a little bit more if you answered yes to a certain question. And like I said, the survey went to Zoom participants and the Amherst Citizen, and it also went out through the Nixle JFAC channel, as well as like our Facebook page, and our website also hosted it. And we are now ready to present our results. So targeted questions. What I did was I broke up our questions kind of in 3 different categories. So this first category talks about the targeted questions. These are questions that are specific to a certain person. Would you be interested in future communications? Then they could provide their email. If you're passionate about a targeted path for Clark's future, would you be interested in participating in a grassroots effort for that cause? First of all, we're able to collect the email addresses, which is great starting now. And then that second question really allows us to kind of wait and see what the path for Clark becomes, and know, certain people who are really interested in a certain path. So if a certain path is chosen by the Amherst School Board later on down the road, we kind of know the people to get back in touch with and say, hey, you were interested in this before. Before. Are you still interested now? Our next group of questions were multiple choice questions. We wanted to get some information for JFAC, since we figured that this was really our first, we really set out with the mission to gather information about Clark. But then we realized that while we were doing that, we were also setting ourselves out as JFAC. And maybe it was the first introduction for several different people around town. So we wanted to find out where people have heard about the facility projects. We also wanted to ask, what community needs do you think could be met through the use of the Clark school and or site? And then we wanted them to rank the 4 options. And finally, these questions were open-ended and designed to elicit feedback and further questions for the group to consider. They included, please note any thoughts on why you ranked the options in the way you did. What questions do you still have? And is there anything else that you think the committee should be considering? Okay, so now we get to the results. I've got some survey responses. I also have results for the multiple choice questions. And then what we've done is really highlighted the conversations in terms of pros and cons for each of the 4 options. Something that, it's a little bit tricky when you give a presentation like this, because we can give the data regarding the survey results. But we also held over, oh gosh, I'm trying to think of how many hours of meetings, over probably 15 hours of meetings. There were conversations, really. And so those conversations, when we did our first pass at this presentation, those conversations weren't really captured. So we wanted to find a way to capture them. So we've captured them in the pros and cons, which include not all, but most are direct quotations from either a meeting or from a survey result. So in total, we had 172 people respond. Out of those, 155 were willing to get future information, which is a pretty high percentage. We were very happy with that. And then, oh, my screen just changed. Hold on one second. There we go. And then we received 211 open-ended comments, which is a lot of comments, but it's also exactly what we were looking for. So those open-ended comments have been compiled and they've been shared with the facility project team. And we'll be talking about those at our future meetings. That group includes administration. Shannon and I attend as JFAC board, and then the Amherst School Board Chair. So they're definitely being reviewed. Nothing is entering a survey and then going to the wayside. It's all being reviewed by multiple people. Okay, so the first question, that's a multiple choice question, is where have you heard about the Amherst facility projects? And we're happy to show that when giving people multiple selections and allowing for write-in answers, we had our postcard mailing, the Amherst Citizen, and word of mouth as the lead spots where people are getting their information, which I think is kind of what we would have thought from a public relations subcommittee point of view. I love that the postcard mailing drove some people to this, and also I think it's really great to see that even the things that we're just starting out with here on our YouTube and our Facebook and our website are gaining popularity. Our Facebook page is, really, it's right in there, so we're doing good. It felt really nice to get these responses. Next question is, what community needs do you think could be met through the use of the Clark School and/or site? This really drove a lot of our conversation that we were having with people. When we first met with everyone, what we did was we gave them a history of JFAC. What's happening with the buildings in Amherst? What's happening with Sohegan? Why is JFAC something that exists for both Sohegan and Amherst? And once we got through the history and kind of where we were at, most people looked at us and said, okay, we understand. So let's talk about Clark. Because if you're going to be building this new Clark Wilkins building, we understand that Clark, might not be the spot that's used in the future. So what really drove a lot of these conversations then were, what could the community see there that would really support us as a group? And here are some answers. So what we did on this, our first group of respondents was about 40 people. And these were our first few groups. And we only had, I'm going to say, half of these listed. And when we had half of them listed, we ended up with a lot of write-in responses, which is great. And those write-in responses became options for the last group of 120 plus people. So you can see here, again, we let people select multiple things. We're not really in the business of choosing what happens there. We wanted to get more information about what would people want to see if it's not a school, and really just opening the conversation, like I said. And I feel like I've said that 17,000 times, but it's really important. And as we were having the meetings, Jeannie at the end of the meetings or at the beginning would say to me, these are great conversations. These are going so well. There's so much back and forth. Not just between us and the people attending, but between the people attending themselves. So it was really great to see. So you'll see here, a lot of this data kind of speaks for itself, which when you put out a survey, you're never sure what it's going to look like. But a lot of it starts to speak for itself at this point. So our next question is to rank the 4 or 5 options. I'll explain that on this one. So for the first 43 meeting attendees, we had 5 options. This is what our subcommittee had first come up with. So at first we thought that there should be a difference in how people wanted the future in terms of selling the building and site to the town or foundation, and using the entire building versus a partial tear down. And when you talk about a partial tear down, we were talking about the entirety of the building. We have very separate parts of the building that are important to many different people. We found in these conversations. We have the historic, the library, if you will. If anybody knows what's going on in the building right now, it's the library. It's the part on the left side when you're looking at the building. We also have the area in the middle, which is where many children have been schooled over the years. And then we have the area on the right, which was raised with community funds and is in memory of a teacher here in town. So we have parts of the building that are important to everyone. What we ended up deciding to do, because there was a lot of conversation about the future and tearing down versus not, is we realized that as a group, as a JFAC group, as Clark, even as a school board, if we were to hand over control to the town or to another foundation, really, we don't have control about what happens to the site at that point. And so any suggestions are suggestions for the next group that would come into ownership. So
I'm sorry, Victoria, can I ask you a question real quick on your slide you were just on? So that was ranked. So this is the first choice for this group. This is their number one choice on your ranking.
Yep. So let me go back to this for a second here. So selection 1 shows that
Gotcha.
the most amount of people. Yeah. When question for you guys, just because I'm not a Zoom connoisseur. When I have my Zoom pictures, are you guys blocked from seeing whatever I'm blocking or no? No. So you can see it all. Okay. So then this is our second round. And in this second round, you'll see that we dropped it to 4 choices. So here on the second round, this town or foundation is what would have been split into 2 separate categories in the previous 5 selections, where now given 4 categories, they ended up being merged. I think, again, the data starts to speak for itself about at least this small sampling, right? Because of course it's only 120 people and we know that that's a small sample. Are you guys good with moving on? Yeah. Okay. All right. So this brings us to our open-ended conversations that we had. And we'll start with sell to residential. Some pros include maintaining a residential neighborhood, less impact to traffic, and financial offset from the sale and the residential income tax. Some cons could be the risk of the unknown, long-lasting construction impact, and lose the property for town use forever. Like I said, it was really great. I copy and pasted from either my notes or from survey results. So it felt like the right way to share all of these comments. Sell to commercial. We have the pros being that the community serving business to bring, let's try that again. We would have a business that would serve the community to bring people together. It could be done well with the Historic District Commission and the Planning Board to oversee commercial use in line with the village area. And it also would give businesses opportunities in Amherst. Some cons include the risk of the unknown, the potential for traffic increase throughout the day and evening. And again, like the sale of residential, we would lose the property for town use. Oops. Hold on. I went a couple forward. Okay. So in terms of raising the building for green space, a pro is that green space is good for the environment. The historic Amherst Village has unique charm with quaint areas like open green spaces, and this would provide more of that. Some liked this open over the outside sale as it remains in town or school control. So what that is trying to kind of allude to is that in some of the meetings, we had some people who said, if you're not going to sell it to the town, then we would like for it to be raised because that area would not be sold. Some cons include ruining a perfectly good building is not environmentally friendly. There is a cost to raise the building, impacting taxpayers, and it doesn't address the town's need for additional meeting space. When it comes to selling to the town or foundation, we have a pro of the historic building to remain an integral part of the village. the ability to benefit the most members of the community, most environmentally friendly choice. And then cons include evening use could impact the neighbors. This does not provide revenue, and it does possibly change the traffic patterns of Foundry and Davis. So we come to some recommendations. These are some overall recommendations. Our group kind of got back together and said, wow, we've really reached out to the community in a way that we weren't, not that we weren't expecting, but we didn't quite understand how large it was going to be when we came back or when we began. So what we would suggest for JFAC overall and ASB moving forward with these projects would be continued communication, conducting more surveys on various aspects of the proposal, follow the data that you collect, and then establish the criteria which the choice will be based upon. That was a question, a key question that came up to us that we said, we do not have that answer, how Amherst School Board will choose or how JFAC will make the choice of a recommendation. So that would need to be defined. And then when it comes to recommendations, this was a quote from one of our surveys. It said, all options are reasonable, provided we maintain the charm and character of the village. And I think that just really summed it up so nicely. You know, again, we're kind of at this place where we know as a group, as JFAC group, that this is going to take several years. But we also know that talking about it is important to do now and is important pre-bond. So there will be future work. There will be future work that we don't even know about yet. At this point, our future work would lie, in wondering if there is interest on the part of the town or foundation to take over the property. We've had conversations with the town, but we have not, you know, we're not at a place to say, hey, do you want it now? Tell us right now. And that's not really, you know, it's not really the right time to do that. Another question would be, what is the maintenance plan and ownership? Who would own it if the area was raised to green space? And then finally, really understanding the residential or commercial sale pricing details is something that we did not feel we could get into right now, knowing that the Clark School will be used for several years as a school as we, you know, bring this to bond or bring this to vote. We just know that the market is a little volatile right now for us to be able to make those decisions. And then that gets us to the end. So I'm happy to take questions. I'm going to stop sharing our screen here. Happy to take questions. I see Ellen's hand raised.
I have a comment and a question. So one comment is raising for green space is not really environmentally friendly because you typically require large amounts of water. Considering the high expectation for something to look green, you will need certain fertilizers and whatnot. So I might delete that comment out of the green space, even though it sounds like it would be green. It's typically not unless you put rocks and desert plants down that don't require water. My other comment would be, let's keep in mind, we're also going to be losing another playground if we eliminate the use of a community center or rec center. So that I think is a big con. I shouldn't say we'll be losing one. We'd be gaining one and then losing an after 3 o'clock playground during the school year. My question is, why can't we ask the town to start really thinking about this? Because when we go to vote next March, it would be great to have an answer. So I don't think it's unrealistic that we start applying additional pressure or really make the selectmen get a committee together to look at this more deeply and give them a deadline.
Yep. So we've had that conversation with the Board of Selectmen chair. And that's part of the reason why we opened the conversation at the last Board of Selectmen meeting when I attended with Shannon as JFAC, because once that's been opened on their, you know, at their meeting in their forum, it's something that they can, you know, discuss more formally.
Yeah.
So it is when Shannon and I go back this month, we plan to bring it up again.
Okay. So let us know if we can do anything to help with our various selectmen friends, that we can sort of start, you know, like, hey, you guys got to get serious about this. We're going to be, boy, wouldn't it be great to let the town people know that one of the largest questions they're going to have is what's going to happen to Clark. Of course, we just need them to make a decision, because then the school district will need to decide what else they're going to do with that building. And again, it would be nice to know the answer in March. We've had a lot of time.
We have. I don't disagree with you. We're also just kind of waiting to make sure that these are the options that make the most sense.
Sure.
You know, and from an administration standpoint, making sure that, you know, before we jump all in, you know, that this is where we're going.
I'm highly encouraged by the answers.
And
Thank you, Victoria.
I just want to jump in real quick too and say that the next step, this is the premiere, if you will, of the work of the Clark School Subcommittee. We are seeing it for the first time. So the next step really is the appropriate step will be for us to take this to the Amherst School Board and present it to the board, since ultimately the board, you know, has a responsibility for that decision with the land. And then we are also on the agenda again in May to present to the Board of Selectmen and include this as well, so that everyone, the school board, the selectmen, the schools in town, can see sort of what the current temperature is in the community, which does have some clear indicators, at least in this stage of the game, of where folks would like to see this, should it no longer be used for us. And I apologize. I know I jumped in and I see some hands raised. So Victoria, I'll let you take over with the Q.
Jeannie, do you want to jump in? You're on mute still.
Yep. I just wanted to add that one of the outcomes of our Zoom conversations, and I know we focused a lot on the survey results, but and Victoria mentioned how I would brave about the conversations that were happening. I thought they were really, really important for a lot of reasons. One of which is that I believe we really opened the minds of some of the selectmen to this possibility, because I think initially, without any information, I think they just were sort of, you know, pulling the curtain down and saying, no, that's just going to cost the taxpayers a lot of money. I think they're now more open to that. So that's a benefit, I think, of this conversation starting now. Also, as a follow-up to that, I would hope that we would, you know, find a way to, I mean, I visited in Concord, the recreation center there that was formerly a school. It did cost a lot of money to turn it into a beautiful recreation center, but it also gave us, Josh Conklin also attended, at least a vision of what Clark could be. And I think it would be really useful if this does go further down the road to make sure that the selectmen get that tour as well, so they can see for themselves what the possibilities are. The other part that I wanted to emphasize is that these Zoom meetings were really important conversations, because we also took the opportunity to educate people about how we got to this point, and about a little bit about the project that it's been going on for several years. So it was sort of interesting to me that there wasn't one moment where anybody said, oh no, we would never support a new elementary school. There was not a single person who said that. And they could have. I mean, clearly the focus was on what to do with Clark, but no one blinked an eye about because we were taking the time to really fill them in on how we got to this point. And I think people really appreciated that. So my recommendation is that in addition to doing more surveys, that we also keep the conversation going, because I think a lot of these people are telling their friends. And the more that we can spread this information, the better.
I agree, Jeannie. Stephanie.
So I'm with Ellen on the fact that I think we need to definitely get information to the Amherst School Board and I don't want to say pressure a decision, but I think they need to be encouraged to make a decision, because there are long-term capital maintenance needs that I'm sure Roger has on his list. And if for some reason the idea of green space over keeping the building and turning it into rec space it could change where you spend your money. And, you know, when they go forward with the bond request, I think they need to have the whole story. And I think it'd be really important for them to have this piece of the story saying, this is the plan. We've already talked with the town or organization, or here's the decision we've made to raise it, make it green space, whatever it is, it's part of the cost of everything. And I think for everyone's planning, it would make sense to have a plan.
I agree with you. And I really appreciate you mentioning that as a member of the Kegan School Board, to be able to say, you know, yes, this is where the Amherst School Board, you know, should be able to focus. Are there any other questions, thoughts, concerns? I will say, Ellen, I wanted to mention, loop back to your playground comment. While I talked about the historic side of the building and the classroom side and the multipurpose room side, there were also people who talked about the playground and how the playground was built as a community build and how that's really special to them too.
Yeah.
So we did have lots of those different pieces.
I'm sure you did. Yes, I'm sure there was a lot of input. And, you know, I think most people probably feel like we do, with the needs of our community as it grows and gets a little younger again too, that playgrounds and outdoor space for families is crucially important. It's where you meet your friends. But the inside of that building could also be used for just a million. But I want to remind everybody, we have an election coming up. So this could be a vital question to ask a selectman who is up for election.
Stephanie, do you have another question? No. Okay. Jeannie, do you have anything else? No. Okay. Brian.
This is like based upon what we do with potentially building a new school or modifying an existing school. If this piece of land and the dwelling on it is not going to be used moving forward, I really think that this is, yes, the school technically owns the land, but I do think that whether it's the selectmen, it's the rec department, like all the town offices need to come together and look at what's the right thing for Amherst as a community. And it's not like I'm a selectman, I work in this office or that office. It's at the end of the day, it's the same taxpayer pool of money. You may sit in different offices, but we need to figure out how do we optimize the needs of the community and best use those tax dollars. And, you know, if it's moving town hall from the green to the old Clark school, like maybe that's the right thing to do. Maybe it's taking the administration office out of the brick school and conjoining them all together. Maybe it's bringing the rec department in there. I don't know what the heck the right answer is, but somebody has to sit back and get these parties together and look at how are we spending our resources and how can we do it in the most effective way possible and utilize all of the spaces that we own as a community, and then figure out what's the optimal pieces to then break off, sell off, decommission, and then strategize around what's the right mix of things to put together. And I feel terrible to put all of that onus on the Amherst School Board, because it's not just their decision to make. I think the community and the leaders in the community need to step forward and work collaboratively and stop this bifurcation of my job, your job. It's a community. It's not these different segregated offices.
Brian, I'm really glad that you mentioned it. When the Clark School Exploration Subcommittee had no name and needed a leader, I had this moment where I said, no, sorry, I'm busy. I'm working on Sohegan 2.0. And then nobody else was coming forward. And I had that moment where I said, you know what, I can do this. And I talked with Stephanie, and Stephanie said, yep, I'm good. I've got Sohegan 2.0. You go figure out this Clark scene. And in calling over to town hall, I connected with Nick Strong. And I said to Nick, here's the deal. We're doing something with the Amherst facilities, and I need the right people at the table. Who can you kind of help me talk with, who would be willing to listen to what's happening on the school side of things? And she gave me some great recommendations, and we had that first meeting and really said to people, we're coming to you. We're crossing the green, if you will, right? From town hall to the brick school. And we've talked about this for years, but the importance of crossing the green and saying, what are we going to do as a town? And really our purpose of doing the survey was to make sure that there was data behind what we thought people would maybe want to do, but we didn't feel like it was the responsibility of the four of us or of JFAC or really of the Amherst School Board to just choose what would happen to that. So really that's where we started with the survey. That's why we were having these meetings to talk with people, and just make sure that everybody's kind of brought together and understands, why this is a project. And I completely agree with you. Nothing should be done in a silo. It's all for the community. It's not just our schools, it's for everybody. There's a lot of ways to use that site. If it gets used by a town or foundation, there are many ways to use that site for multi-generational use. And many community members have lots of great ideas. So I'm encouraged to see where it goes in the future. Ellen.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Victoria, can we push out the survey again to maybe get a larger sampling?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and obviously I'm happy to help with that. But I wonder if when, probably as summer hits, things will get a little crazy for everybody. I hope. I mean, that would be great. Where people go away and people aren't around.
I think it'd be worth having the survey on election day at the table.
So the survey, just so everybody knows, that it's still up on our website. And I think that we have a number of surveys probably that we need to and should be doing along the way and throughout the summer. So I think that, we'll work in conjunction, the PR group and the Clark School to time those surveys.
But so my little piece of paper that we're going to hand out, Isla Coogan's coming. She's going to hand out the paper. She's charming. She could sell. Yeah, she could sell an island. So why don't I consider making a section for your feedback, right? Places you can give your feedback, and then we can link the survey on there.
Yeah, even the flyer, if you had the URL to the direct link to the survey.
Yeah, why don't we all, I'm going to add that to the agenda for our next PR meeting. Let's talk about how we can push surveys out, opportunities, one upcoming at June 8th. Victoria, thank you so much.
Can I just add one thing, Shannon?
Yeah.
The property is zoned residential. So in order for it to become commercial, there would have to be a lot of hoops that needed to be jumped. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware of that, so they're not thinking that as a extra viable opportunity, because it would be very difficult. And
that's a great point. It's rural residential.
Right. And it's also, we're dealing with a neighborhood. I mean, these people live within 20 feet of Clark School. So obviously the neighbors and what works for them is going to be essential as well.
Yep. Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Victoria, and everyone on your committee. My takeaways from your project, first of all, I appreciate the process that you all implemented. I really appreciate you, to borrow your phrase, crossing the green and going to the town. I think that's what Joint Facilities Advisory Committee as a whole, I think that's the great thing that we bring to this effort with all of our schools, with Sohegan, with AMS, with Clark Wilkins, is that we are a diverse group of folks who are interested in making certain that everyone is represented. I appreciate that Selectman D'Angelo has come to most of our meetings, and I appreciate the selectmen being very open and welcoming to us at their meetings. So Brian, to the point you raised earlier, I think we're getting there. I think, we're taking all the steps to try to connect everyone so that once we kind of reach that, final point where we're asking folks to make decisions and make priorities when they go to the ballot box next March, we can answer those things. So more communication, more surveys. We want to hear from more people. That's what I heard. The takeaway from the Clark Group Subcommittee. We need to keep getting answers to questions and getting them out in the community. Does anyone else have any other questions around anything Victoria just shared? Brian, I think your hand's up. Is that from earlier?
It's from earlier. I don't know. I don't use that very often.
Awesome. That's
I
no
don't know.
problem.
I have a question anyway. So I don't know if this is allowable, but are you allowed to, like for on voting day, they have like exit polls? Like, could we do something like that? I don't know if we're allowed to do stuff like that, but like, could you potentially use it as an opportunity to say, like, just grab people like, hey, we're exploring this stuff, right? And we want to hear as much input from the community as possible. You got 5 minutes. It would be just interesting if we had if there were 3 things we were interested in learning about from the community to make it quick and easy for people, because no one wants to talk for more than 2 minutes. It's painful, particularly if it's me. But if we had something that just could grab the pulse of the community real quick, 3 questions, bang. Maybe I'm crazy, but
I don't think you're crazy. I like where you're going. I think you're seeking opportunities to meet people where they are and to get their input on, are we heading down a path that, nobody wants us to head down? And I think that's important. I don't have the answer to your specific question regarding what's allowed outside the table at voting day. But we can certainly explore that more in subcommittee and reach out to the moderator. And Stephanie, I saw you take mute off and
yeah, Steve Coughlin.
Yep.
Yeah. They've also we've also done surveys in the past, paper surveys that people could pick up and fill out. I know that's antiquated, but that has been done in the past. The other idea that I love, Brian, is the exit part, because if any of you have ever run for election, you know that nobody wants to make eye contact on the way in. So you're better off on the way out.
I would also suggest perhaps asking some students to be involved in that. I feel like that would be a great opportunity to have high school
homeschool
students.
activity. Anybody here homeschooling your children?
So it's also finals week at the high school.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's be a lot of crazy movement, I think, that week, or that, voting day. But I like the idea of even I know it sounds antiquated, Jean, but the paper questionnaire. So my Girl Scout troop was helping at the Garden Club plant sale. And many of those people are not digitally savvy. And they have lost touch with the town because they don't get the Citizen anymore.
Yeah.
So idea of paper questionnaire is not dumb. I think it's not a dumb idea.
Yeah.
I only deal in like advanced technology. That's what I do for work. And when I said that, I was literally thinking like stay there with an index card writing down like I have a question for you, like little stenographer, like
You should have heard these
and a clipboard.
They're just so
I
upset
agree.
over everything going digital.
I agree, Brian. I see, students or, other volunteers grabbing people as they leave with a clipboard and asking them a couple of quick questions.
It's also like you're saying to the community, I care about you. I care about what you think. I want you to be involved. If I literally have to grab you off the streets to get you involved in this, I will do it, because this is going to affect you. And we don't want to be a vocal minority. We want this to be something that the community as a majority is working toward. And anything we can do to bridge that gap with people, make that connection point. And it's so much easier to have a strong connection with people in person. I know it's COVID, you have to wear masks and whatever the hell we're doing, but there's something about that physical presence with people that makes a difference.
I agree.
One other thing I just want to mention while we're talking about the paper concept, something that's kind of happening in the background is as we are getting closer with Banwell and we have a new plan maybe or some modifications, Shannon and I have talked about reaching out to the library to see if we can provide some information at the library. So in print so that people can look at it. So you know how like the voter's guide, a copy can be at the library. Well, maybe we have a certain presentation or something about the facility project where people can go to the library and read about it and, you know, be able to touch it, because not having the citizen is, it is a loss for our community.
Mhm.
Awesome. So good stuff. Definitely loving the idea on voting day. So we'll make sure we connect with Moderator Coughlin and ask what is allowed and what isn't, so that we are asking the right questions and polling people in the appropriate way. I have next on the agenda school board updates, if applicable. So I will pitch that to Ellen for her last school board update at this meeting, if she has anything from the Amherst School Board to share with us tonight. Not much tonight. I think we probably stole the thunder with the intro of Banwell at the start of the meeting, so.
No, I really don't feel like, I feel like it was very JFAC focused, and most of us were sort of there. So I can't say that anything stands out that I need to share with the group. Yeah, not really.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Thank you. Stephanie, anything from Sauhegan?
No, we have, our next meeting is actually Tuesday, so we haven't had a meeting too recently, and I don't think there's anything that's JFAC fully focused, so, since we just had deliberative, that's.
Great. Okay. Well, our next meeting is June 10th. And I know we all have various subcommittee meetings in the meantime. So as always, if anything, you know, springs to mind in between, reach out, go in the Slack, send an email, call me. If you don't have my number, ask, I will give it to you. But unless, does anyone have any other business that they would like to? Ellen.
Just a reminder that I will not, after the vote, I will not be checking my SAU 39 email as aggressively as I have in the past. So probably best to just email me at my business email.
Great.
Okay. Hi, Isla.
Thank you. Okay. I don't see any other hands up. Thank you all for all of your work. And I look forward to seeing you next month. And this meeting is adjourned at 7:27. Good night.